Zaxthul pressed his face against the shuttle window as Earth came into view. Its blue and green surface looked strange to him, so different from the red deserts of his home planet. He felt the familiar tightness in his chest, a mix of excitement and fear. Being the first Arcturian exchange student at Berkeley University was a big honor, but also a heavy burden. "Prepare for atmospheric entry," announced the pilot. "All non-humans should take gravity adjustment medication now." Zaxthul swallowed the bitter pill. His skin, normally a pale purple, briefly flickered with nervous blue spots, a reaction his orientation advisor had warned him to control while on Earth. Humans found the color changes unsettling. 3 hours later, Zaxthul stood outside his dorm room, 3 large cases hovering behind him. He pressed his 4-fingered hand against the scanner as he had been instructed. The door slid open. "Oh, hey there. You must be, Zax? Zach?" A young human male with curly brown hair looked up from a device on his bed. "Zaxthul," he said, carefully trying to keep his voice at the lower register humans preferred. "But Zax is acceptable." Cool. I'm Nathan Kelly. Nice to meet you." The human stood and extended his hand. Zaxthul remembered his training and grasped Nathan's hand, careful not to squeeze too hard with his enhanced strength. "The pleasure is mutual, Nathan Kelly." "Just Nathan is fine." The human smiled. "So, you're from Arcturus, right? That's what, 15 light years away?" 16.8, Zaxthul corrected, then worried he sounded condescending. "Your astronomy knowledge is impressive." Nathan shrugged. "Physics major. Space is kind of my thing." He pointed to Zaxthul's cases. "Need help unpacking?" The next few days passed in a blur of orientation sessions, strange foods, and confusing social customs. Earth's gravity made Zaxthul's joints ache, and the air felt thick in his breathing chambers. But Nathan proved to be a patient guide, explaining everything from shower temperature controls to why humans said, "Bless you," when someone sneezed. "So this Professor Wright is supposed to be brilliant?" Zaxthul asked as they walked across campus to his first advanced theoretical physics class. "Oh yeah. Dr. Allison Wright is like genius level. Got her PhD at 22. Some say she was being considered for the Nobel before she shifted to classified research." Nathan adjusted his backpack. "Word is she only came back to teaching after first contact, probably hoping to pick alien brains like yours." Zaxthul tensed. Did Nathan suspect something? "My knowledge of physics is standard for my age group. Nothing special. Dude, your civilization has had faster than light travel for centuries. Your standard is our cutting edge." They entered the lecture hall, which was already half full. Zaxthul felt the familiar sensation of eyes tracking him. Some curious, some friendly, some distinctly not. A tall human female with dark hair tied back tightly stared at him with narrowed eyes. "That's Olivia Martinez," Nathan whispered. "Top. Of every class, super competitive. Don't take it personally if she seems cold, she's like that with everyone." Zaxthul nodded and found a seat, carefully adjusting his posture to accommodate his different spine structure. As he was setting up his data tablet, a large human male dropped into the seat beside him. "Hey, space dude, I'm Derek Washington." The human's voice was loud but friendly. "You're in my cultural anthropology class too, right? The one with Professor Bennett?" Before Zaxthul could answer, the lecture hall door opened and a woman with silver-streaked blonde hair walked in. The room immediately quieted. "Welcome to Advanced Theoretical Physics," she said without preamble. "I'm Professor Wright. If you're looking for an easy science credit, the door is behind you." No one moved. "Good. Now I understand we have a visitor from the stars with us this semester." All eyes turned to Zaxthul. His skin threatened to flicker blue again, but he controlled it. "Zaxthul of Arcturus Prime," he said, standing as was customary in his culture when addressed by an educator. Professor Wright smiled. "No need to stand, Mr. Zaxthul. On Earth, students remain seated unless asked otherwise." Her eyes sparkled with interest. "Though I appreciate the courtesy, I hope you'll share perspectives from your world's physics understanding when relevant to our discussions." The class proceeded, with Wright explaining the semester's focus on theoretical faster-than-light propulsion principles. Zaxthul found himself impressed by how close some human theories came to actual Arcturian methods, despite working with much more limited technology. After class, as Zaxthul gathered his materials, Olivia Martinez approached him. "Your note-taking device," she said, pointing to his tablet. "That's not standard Earth tech." "It is Arcturian," he admitted. "We were permitted certain personal items." Her eyes narrowed. "How does it work without charging?" "I've been watching." Zaxthul hesitated. He wasn't supposed to explain too much about Arcturian technology. "Efficient power management," he said finally. "Right." She clearly didn't believe him. "See you around, alien." She walked away stiffly. Derek laughed and patted Zaxthul's shoulder. "Don't mind her. Hey, some of us are getting food at the Union. Wanna come?" "Thank you, but I have another class." This wasn't true, but Zaxthul needed time to process the day's experiences. Instead, he walked to a quiet corner of campus, finding a bench under a tree. He took out a small device from his pocket, a secure communicator disguised as an ordinary Earth phone. "Day 5 report," he said softly in his native language. "Integration proceeding as expected. Humans show significant curiosity but limited suspicion. Professor Ellison Wright displays unusual knowledge of theoretical propulsion systems. Requesting background information. One student, Olivia Martinez, shows heightened suspicion. Will monitor." As he finished his report, Zaxthul noticed a man watching him from the other side of the quad. Professor Richard Bennett from his xenobiology class. The professor quickly looked away and walked off when their eyes met. Zaxthul frowned. Something wasn't right about Bennett. His questions in class seemed designed to probe for specific cultural weaknesses, not foster understanding. And now he was watching Zaxthul during his private time. That evening, as Nathan and Zaxthul ate dinner in their room, Zaxthul still couldn't handle the crowded dining hall. Nathan asked, "So how's Earth treating you so far?" Zaxthul thought about the question. About the helpful Nathan, the friendly Derek, the suspicious Olivia, the brilliant Professor Wright, and the watching eyes of Professor Bennett. "Earth is complicated," he said finally. "But interesting, very interesting." Nathan laughed. "Man, if you think college is complicated, wait until you see the rest of our planet." Zaxthul smiled, but inside he worried. If his mission went as planned, Nathan might never get the chance to show him more of Earth. And for the first time since arriving, that thought made Zaxthul sad. 3 months passed, and the California winter brought cooler weather to Berkeley. For Zaxthul, whose homeworld was much hotter, this meant extra layers of clothing and special warming packs hidden under his human-style sweaters. But the cold outside was nothing compared to the ice he still faced from some students. "Look, it's the purple people eater," whispered a voice as Zaxthul walked through the library. He pretended not to hear, though his Arcturian hearing caught every word clearly. Zaxthul had grown used to such comments. Most students were kind or at least neutral, but there remained a group who saw all aliens as invaders. Their leader, a burly engineering student named Kyle Peterson, seemed to make it his mission to accidentally bump into Zaxthul in hallways or knock his books to the ground. "Don't let those jerks get to you," said Nathan as they studied late one night in their dorm room. 3 empty pizza boxes lay on the floor between them. Zaxthul had developed a strong taste for pepperoni, though he had to take special enzymes to digest it properly. "I am not bothered by primitive tribal responses," Zaxthul said, then caught himself. "I apologize. That sounded superior." Nathan laughed. "Well, you kind of are superior. Your people have been zipping around the galaxy while we were still figuring out electricity." Zaxthul shifted uncomfortably on his bed. "That is not entirely accurate." "What do you mean?" Zaxthul hesitated. He had grown to trust Nathan these past months. Perhaps too much. "The truth is complicated. Earth has been observed for a long time." Nathan sat up straighter. "Observed? Like alien abductions and crop circles?" "No, nothing so crude." Zach Thule said quickly. More like anthropological study. Earth is what we call a protected observation planet. Your natural development path was supposed to be monitored, but not disturbed. Supposed to be. Nathan's voice grew sharper. What happened? Zach Thule sighed, his skin briefly showing patches of regretful green. According to our models, humans should not have developed FTL theory for another 2 centuries. Something accelerated your progress unnaturally. Are you saying someone cheated and gave us answers to the test? Nathan looked both offended and intrigued. That is not a bad analogy. That is why the exchange program exists. I was sent to evaluate how this happened and whether humans are ready for the consequences of advanced space travel. Nathan stared at him for a long moment. So you're what, a spy? Observer, Zach Thule corrected. My reports help determine Earth's status in the Confederation. And if we fail your evaluation, Zach Thule looked away. Restrictions would be imposed. For your own protection, of course. Of course, Nathan echoed, his voice cold. He stood up and grabbed his jacket. Where are you going? Zach Thule asked, worried about the anger in his roommate's eyes. For a walk. I need to think. Nathan paused at the door. Don't worry, I won't tell anyone your secret, but you should know. Humans don't like being treated like lab rats in someone else's experiment. The door closed firmly behind him, leaving Zach Thule alone with his thoughts and regrets. The next morning was awkward. Nathan spoke only when necessary as they prepared for class. When they parted ways at the science building, Zach Thule felt a heaviness in his chest that his training hadn't prepared him for. Professor Wright's class was discussing theoretical wormhole stabilization that day. Under normal circumstances, Zach Thule would have been fascinated. The humans were only a few conceptual steps away from actual Arcturian methods. But today he found it hard to concentrate. Mr. Zach Thule, Professor Wright called, breaking into his thoughts. Perhaps you could share your perspective on Hawking radiation effects on micro-wormhole stability? Before he could answer, Olivia Martinez cut in. I'm sure his people have a convenient solution that they're not allowed to share. Her tone was sharp with challenge. Ms. Martinez, Professor Wright warned. No, I'm serious, Olivia continued. We're supposed to pretend this is a fair academic exchange, but they keep all the real knowledge to themselves. Meanwhile, he's collecting data on everything we do. Zach Thule felt the eyes of everyone in the class turn to him. Had Nathan broken his promise already? I assure you, I am here to learn as well as share, Zach Thule said carefully. Then prove it, Olivia pushed. Answer the question honestly. Do Arcturians have working wormhole technology? The class grew silent. Even Professor Wright seemed interested in his answer. Theoretical limitations exist for all species, he said finally. Some problems require perspectives we have not yet considered, Olivia snorted. Nice dodge. After class, Derek caught up with Zach Thule in the hallway. Hey man, don't let Olivia get to you. She's been acting weird ever since she started working with Professor Bennett on some research project. Zach Thule stopped walking. What project? Something about comparative xenobiology. Bennett's got this theory about evolutionary convergence across planets. Derek shrugged. Sounds boring to me, but she's been spending every free hour in his lab. That evening, Zach Thule decided to investigate. He waited until campus was quiet, then made his way to the biology building. Using a small device that could bypass Earth security systems, he entered Professor Bennett's lab. The main room appeared normal. Microscopes, sample containers, standard Earth technology. But something felt wrong. Zach Thule moved to Bennett's office and carefully searched through his computer files. What he found made his blood run cold. Bennett wasn't just studying alien biology. He had detailed files on every exchange student on Earth, including private medical data that should have been impossible for him to access. And there was more. Communications with an organization called the Earth First Coalition, discussing the alien problem and the need for protective measures. Zach Thule was copying these files when the lights suddenly turned on. He spun around to find Olivia Martinez staring at him from the doorway. I knew it, she said, her voice trembling with anger or fear. Zaxthul couldn't tell which. "You are spying on us." "This is not what it appears," Zaxthul started to explain, but Olivia was already backing toward the door. "Professor Bennett was right about you. All of you." She turned to run. "Wait," Zaxthul called, but she was already gone. He quickly finished copying the files and left, his mind racing. He needed to report this immediately. But what would he say? That humans knew more about aliens than they should? That a professor was gathering data against Confederation citizens? That his cover was likely blown? And worst of all, what if Bennett was right to be suspicious? What if Zaxthul's own government wasn't telling him everything about their plans for Earth? As he hurried back to his dorm, Zaxthul noticed a news alert on the campus screens. Tensions rise as Confederation denies technology sharing request. The world was changing quickly around him. Whatever was coming, Zaxthul feared he wasn't ready for it, and neither was Earth. Zaxthul barely slept that night. His report to his superiors had been met with alarming instructions. Continue observation, do not interfere. Reinforcements en route. The vague response left him uneasy. What kind of reinforcements? And why now? The next morning, Nathan was already gone when Zaxthul woke up. His roommate had left a note. "We need to talk. Meet at Wright's class." As Zaxthul walked across campus, he noticed more security guards than usual. They watched him with obvious suspicion. News screens showed protests in major cities around the world. The headline read, "Anti-alien sentiment grows as Confederation denies Earth's request to join Council." Professor Wright's class was scheduled to include a special demonstration today on theoretical faster-than-light travel principles. Despite everything, Zaxthul felt a flutter of excitement. Professor Wright had hinted at a breakthrough in her research. He entered the lecture hall to find it nearly full. Nathan waved him over to a seat he had saved. "I'm sorry about yesterday," Nathan said quietly as Zaxthul sat down. "I was angry, but I thought about it all night. You're just doing your job." "And I am sorry for not being fully honest with you," Zaxthul replied. "You have been a true friend, Nathan." Nathan smiled, but it looked strained. "Just promise me one thing. If something happens, if Earth is in danger, you'll tell me." Before Zaxthul could answer, Professor Wright entered the room. She looked tense but excited as she began setting up equipment at the front of the class. "Today's demonstration will show how theoretical wormhole creation might work in practice," she explained. "This is just a simulation, of course, but the principles are sound." As she worked, Zaxthul noticed Olivia Martinez slip into the room and whisper something to Professor Bennett, who was sitting in the back row. Bennett's face darkened as he listened. Professor Wright activated her equipment. A small sphere of light appeared above the demonstration table, pulsing with energy. "This represents the initial quantum fluctuation that, when properly amplified, could theoretically tear the fabric of space-time," she explained. Zaxthul leaned forward. This was remarkably close to actual Arcturian technology. Too close. How had she made such progress? The sphere grew larger, its light casting strange shadows across the room. Students murmured in appreciation, but Zaxthul felt a growing sense of alarm. The energy signature was familiar, dangerously familiar. Before he could say anything, the lecture hall doors burst open. 5 people in black clothing rushed in, faces covered, carrying what looked like weapons. "Nobody move," shouted the leader, a tall man with cold eyes visible through his mask. "This is the Earth First Coalition. We're taking control of this room and everyone in it." Screams and shouts filled the air. Students ducked under desks or froze in fear. "Stay calm," Professor Wright called out. "Please don't hurt anyone." The leader pointed his weapon at her. "Shut down that device, Professor, now." As Wright moved to comply, the leader turned to scan the room. His eyes stopped when they reached Zaxthul. Well, the purple spy himself. He gestured with his weapon. "Stand up, alien. Hands where we can see them." Zaxthul slowly rose to his feet. The room had gone silent. "What do you want?" Zaxthul asked calmly, though his skin was threatening to flicker with stress colors. "Justice," the man spat. Your kind comes here, pretends to share knowledge while secretly judging if we're worthy. Meanwhile, you keep all the real technology to yourselves. One of the other masked figures moved to the doors, locking them. All secure, Kyle, the leader cursed. Don't use names, idiot. But it was too late. Zaxthul recognized the voice now. Kyle Peterson, the engineering student who had harassed him for months. Kyle, Zaxthul said evenly, this accomplishes nothing. Let these people go. Shut up, Kyle shouted. You don't get to talk. We know the truth. Professor Bennett showed us everything. All eyes turned to Bennett, who stood up slowly from his seat in the back. I only shared what I discovered, Bennett said, his voice strangely calm. That the Arcturians and the entire Confederation have been manipulating Earth's development for centuries. That is not true, Zaxthul protested. No? Bennett walked forward slowly. Then explain why your people have been abducting humans for generations. Explain the implants, the genetic tampering. Confusion crossed Zaxthul's face. I don't know what you're talking about. My people have never— Liar! Kyle shouted, jabbing his weapon toward Zaxthul. We found the proof in your own communications. Nathan stood up beside Zaxthul. I don't know what you think you found, but violence isn't the answer. Stay out of this, traitor, Kyle snarled. When we're done with the alien, we'll deal with sympathizers like you. Professor Wright stepped forward cautiously. Kyle, please think about what you're doing. This is a classroom, not a battlefield. It became a battlefield the moment they invaded our planet, Kyle said. And now we're going to use the professor's research to even the playing field. He gestured to the glowing sphere, which was still pulsing on the demonstration table. Bennett says this device is based on alien tech. We're taking it. Zaxthul felt a chill run through him. If they tried to move that device in its current state, that would be unwise, he said urgently. That equipment is unstable. More lies, Bennett said smoothly. The alien just doesn't want humans to have the technology. Derek Washington stood, up from his seat near the front. Come on, man, this is crazy. We're all just students here. Sit down. One of Kyle's accomplices shouted, pointing a weapon at Derek. No, Derek said firmly. This has gone far enough. What happened next seemed to unfold in slow motion. Derek took a step forward. The masked figure panicked and fired his weapon, but instead of a bullet, a pulse of blue energy shot out, catching Derek in the shoulder. He crumpled to the ground with a cry of pain. Students screamed. Someone ran for the door but was quickly pushed back by another masked figure. Zaxthul stared, in shock at the weapon. That was not Earth technology. That was a Vex pulse stunner, technology from a rival alien species that should not exist on Earth. As Derek lay groaning on the floor, Professor Wright rushed to help him. Kyle grabbed her arm roughly. You're coming with us, Professor. You'll help us use this technology against them. He pointed at Zaxthul. Let her go, Zaxthul said, his voice suddenly different, deeper, more commanding. Kyle laughed. Or what? You're outnumbered, alien. I am not just a student, Zaxthul said, standing straighter. Years of military training took over as he assessed the situation. I am Lieutenant Zaxthul of the Arcturian Defense Force, and you are all in grave danger. The room went completely silent. Even Kyle seemed momentarily stunned. Not from me, Zaxthul continued, pointing at Bennett. From him, because Professor Richard Bennett is not human at all. The room erupted into chaos. Students who had been frozen in fear now shouted and pushed toward the exits. Kyle's masked followers looked at each other in confusion. What are you talking about? Kyle demanded, his weapon wavering between Zaxthul and Bennett. The weapons your people carry are Vex technology, Zaxthul said calmly, taking a small step forward. Earth does not have such weapons. Only one group would give them to humans, the Vex Collective. Bennett's face remained oddly calm. The alien is desperate, making up stories to save himself, but Olivia Martinez had gone pale. She backed away from Bennett. The DNA samples, she whispered. When I tested them in the lab, there were anomalies I couldn't explain. Bennett's eyes narrowed at her. You were not authorized to run those tests. Look around you, Kyle. Zaxthul continued. You think you're fighting for Earth, but you're being used as pawns in a game between alien powers. Kyle shook his head. No. Bennett showed us the proof of Arcturian experiments on humans. Fabricated, Zaxthul said. Ask yourself, who gave you those weapons? Who really benefits from conflict between Earth and the Confederation? Doubt flickered across Kyle's face. He glanced at Bennett, who remained unnaturally still. Professor Wright, still kneeling beside the injured Derek, spoke up. The energy signature of those weapons, it matches readings I detected last month during my research. Bennett's calm facade finally cracked. He smiled, but the expression wasn't human. It stretched too wide, showed too many teeth. Clever Arcturian, he said, his voice changing, becoming deeper, more resonant. But too late, the plan is already in motion. Without warning, Bennett's skin began to ripple. Students screamed as his features shifted, melted and reformed. His body grew taller, thinner, his skin darkening to a deep greenish black. His eyes expanded, becoming large black orbs without whites or visible pupils. What the? Kyle stumbled backward, his weapon clattering to the floor. Vex infiltrator, Zaxthul said grimly. They've been manipulating events all along. The creature that had been Bennett hissed, revealing rows of needle-like teeth. We merely accelerated the inevitable. Humans are violent, unpredictable. The Confederation was wrong to consider them for membership. So you engineered this conflict, Zaxthul realized, to prove humans are too dangerous. The Earth First Coalition is your creation, Professor Wright said, her eyes wide with understanding. You've been pushing both sides toward confrontation. The Vex made a sound like bitter laughter. So easy to manipulate. Humans fear what is different. And Arcturians are so arrogant in their superiority. One of Kyle's masked friends pulled off his mask, revealing a young man with a shocked expression. What have we done? What have we been part of? The Vex raised a hand, and something, black and metallic, formed around it. Enough talk. The demonstration must proceed. Before anyone could move, the creature fired at Professor Wright's equipment. The glowing sphere pulsed wildly, expanding and contracting, casting strange shadows across the room. No, Professor Wright shouted. The containment field can't handle that energy. The sphere began to emit a high-pitched whine. The air around it warped, creating a visual distortion like heat rising from pavement. What's happening? Nathan asked, grabbing Zaxthul's arm. Uncontrolled quantum fluctuation, Zaxthul explained, quickly. If it collapses, it could tear a hole in space-time. Like a black hole? Nathan looked horrified. More like a bridge to somewhere else, Zaxthul said. Somewhere the Vex want to access. The Vex creature moved toward the growing distortion, seemingly unbothered by the energy crackling around it. The gateway opens. My people come. Olivia pushed through panicking students to reach Professor Wright. Can we shut it down? Not without the control module, Wright said, pointing to a small device the Vex had taken. Kyle, who had been frozen in shock, suddenly seemed to snap back to reality. This is our fault. We have to fix it. He looked at his remaining followers. Help get everyone out. The masked figures began directing students toward the exits, which were no longer guarded. Zaxthul assessed the situation quickly. His military training identified 3 immediate problems. The injured Derek needed medical attention, the spatial distortion was growing unstable, and the Vex infiltrator was still armed and dangerous. Nathan, get Derek out of here, Zaxthul ordered. Then, he turned to Wright and Olivia. What do you need to stabilize that thing? The control module, Wright repeated. But even with it, I'm not sure. Then we take it back, Zaxthul said firmly. From a hidden pocket in his clothing, he pulled out a small silver device. What is that? Olivia asked. Standard Arcturian defense tool, Zaxthul replied, activating. The device expanded in his hand, forming a slender rod about 2 feet long. Not quite regulation for exchange students, The Vex noticed the weapon and hissed, "You are outnumbered, Arcturian." "Am I?" Zax Thule asked. As if on cue, the windows of the lecture hall shattered. 3 figures in sleek silver suits dropped into the room, each holding devices similar to Zax Thule's but larger. "Arcturian Defense Force," announced the leader of the new arrivals. "Stand down." The Vex snarled. Too late. The gate opens. The spatial distortion had grown to the size of a car, its edges flickering with strange energies. Beyond it, shadowy shapes could be seen moving, approaching. "Lieutenant, report," one of the Arcturian soldiers said to Zax Thule. "Vex infiltrator has created an unstable gateway." Zax Thule replied quickly. "Earth Professor believes she can close it with that control module." He pointed to the device in the Vex's hand. The Arcturian soldiers moved to surround the Vex, but it was fast, inhumanly fast. It leapt across the room, scaling the wall like an insect. Kyle, who had been helping students evacuate, suddenly grabbed one of the dropped alien weapons. Without hesitation, he fired at the Vex. The shot went wide, hitting the wall, but it distracted the creature long enough for one of the Arcturian soldiers to land a hit with their weapon. The Vex shrieked as energy coursed through its body. The control module fell from its hand, clattering across the floor. Olivia lunged for it, sliding across the floor like a baseball player stealing home. "Got it," she shouted, tossing it to Professor Wright. Wright caught it and immediately began working with the controls. "Everyone get back. I don't know if this will work." The gateway had grown even larger, now pulsing with angry red energy. Through it, dark figures were becoming clearer. More Vex ready to step through to Earth. "We need more time," Wright said frantically. Nathan, who had been helping Derek to safety, suddenly ran back into the room. "What can I do?" Zax Thule looked at his friend with surprise and admiration. "Help them. I'll buy you time." With that, Zax Thule stepped between the gateway and the humans, his weapon extended. Behind him, Nathan joined Wright and Olivia at the control panel, his physics knowledge allowing him to quickly understand what they were trying to do. The first Vex figure reached the threshold of the gateway, its arm extending through the distortion into Earth's reality. "For Earth," Zax Thule said quietly, and moved to face the invasion that threatened his friend's world. The gateway pulsed with violent energy as the first Vex soldier pushed further into the classroom. Its body was similar to Bennett's transformed shape, but covered in what looked like black armor. Long, insect-like limbs reached through the distortion, claws clicking against the floor. Zax Thule stood his ground, weapon raised. Behind him, Professor Wright, Olivia, and Nathan worked frantically on the control module. "Hurry," Zax Thule called over his shoulder. "More are coming." The Arcturian soldiers moved to flank him, forming a barrier between the gateway and the humans. The original Vex infiltrator, formerly Professor Bennett, had recovered from the energy blast and was climbing along the ceiling, trying to circle around them. "We can't close it directly," Professor Wright said, her fingers flying over the control module. "The quantum entanglement is too strong." "Can we reverse it?" Nathan suggested. "Like, instead of closing it, make it pull back." Wright looked at him with surprise. "Brilliant. Yes. If we invert the field harmonics," Olivia pointed to a section of the controls. "This regulates the energy flow. If we reverse it, it would create a vacuum effect," Wright finished, "pulling everything from our side of the gateway back through." Meanwhile, Kyle Peterson had gathered his courage and his remaining followers. They had abandoned their masks and now stood with the alien weapons they had been given, uncertain but determined. "We caused this," Kyle said, grimly. "We have to help fix it." The first Vex soldier was now fully through the gateway. It rose to its full height, nearly 8 feet tall, and made a sound like metal scraping against stone. Behind it, more dark shapes pushed forward. Zax Thule fired his weapon, sending a burst of blue energy into the creature. It staggered, but didn't fall. The Arcturian soldiers joined in, their combined fire driving the Vex back toward the gateway but not through it. "They're stronger than expected," one of the Arcturian soldiers said. "Must be military caste." The Vex infiltrator that had been Bennett dropped from the ceiling, landing behind the human group working on the controls. Olivia screamed as it reached for the control module. Kyle fired without hesitation. His shot caught the Vex in the shoulder, causing it to shriek and stumble back. Wright clutched the control module to her chest, protecting it. Almost there, Nathan said, connecting wires on the back of the device. Just need to... The gateway suddenly flared brighter, expanding another few feet. 3 more Vex pushed through at once, their movements fast and coordinated like a hunting pack. We can't hold them all, an Arcturian soldier warned as they continued, firing. The original Vex recovered from Kyle's shot and lunged again for the control module. This time, Olivia was ready. She swung a heavy textbook, catching the creature across its face. It hissed in pain and anger. "Got it," Nathan announced. "Professor, now!" Wright activated the modified control module. For a terrifying moment, nothing happened. Then the gateway's energy changed color, shifting from angry red to deep purple. Howling wind filled the room, pulling toward the gateway. Papers, books, and loose equipment flew through the air toward the distortion. "It's working," Wright shouted over the noise. "The reversed field is creating a massive attractive force." The Vex soldiers dug their claws into the floor, fighting against the pull. The one nearest the gateway lost its grip and was yanked back, through the distortion, shrieking as it went. "Everyone grab onto something," Zaxthul warned, hooking his arm around a bolted-down desk. The humans scrambled to secure themselves as the pull grew stronger. Kyle helped his followers take cover behind heavy lab tables. Nathan held onto a support column with one arm and gripped Wright's lab coat with the other, as she continued adjusting the control module. The Vex infiltrator that had been Bennett was caught in the open. It scrabbled desperately at the smooth floor as the gateway's pull dragged it backward inch by inch. "This is for lying to us," Kyle shouted at the creature as it slid past. The remaining Vex soldiers lost their battle with the vacuum force. One by one, they were pulled back through the gateway, their alien screams fading as they disappeared into the distortion. "The gateway is becoming unstable," Wright warned. "Once the reversal collapses, we'll only have seconds to shut it down, completely." Olivia pointed to a blinking section on the control module. "The power coupling is overheating." Nathan looked around frantically, then grabbed a water bottle from a nearby desk. He poured it over the module's edge, creating a sizzle of steam but cooling the critical component. "Smart thinking," Wright said with a quick smile. The last Vex infiltrator, Bennett, gave one final desperate attempt to save itself, extending a long limb toward Kyle. Kyle kicked the grasping claw away, and the creature was finally sucked back through the gateway with a wail of defeat. "Now, Professor," Zaxthul shouted. Wright pressed a final sequence on the control module. The gateway began to shrink, its edges collapsing inward. The howling wind died down as the distortion grew smaller and smaller. With a final flash of light and a sound like thunder, the gateway snapped shut and disappeared. Silence fell over the wrecked classroom. Papers settled to the floor. The humans and Arcturians looked at each other in disbelief and exhaustion. "Is it over?" Olivia asked quietly. "Yes," Zaxthul said, lowering his weapon. "For now." 1 week later, Zaxthul stood in the office of the university president along with Professor Wright, Nathan, Olivia, and Kyle. Derek sat in a chair, his arm in a sling but otherwise recovered from his injury. On a screen at the front of the room, the faces of both human government officials and Arcturian commanders looked on. "The Vex infiltration has been confirmed at multiple sites around your planet," said the Arcturian High Commander. "Their plan to trigger conflict between our peoples nearly succeeded." "But it didn't," said the Human Secretary General. "Thanks to cooperation between humans and Arcturians." Zaxthul stepped forward. "I recommend a full alliance between Earth and the Arcturian Confederation. The Vex threat remains, and we are stronger together." Kyle, who had once hated all aliens, nodded in agreement. "We were manipulated by fear and lies. That stops now." The Secretary General looked thoughtful. "What of the technology sharing that started this crisis?" "I propose a new exchange program," Professor Wright said. "Not just students but scientists, working together openly." "I second that," Nathan added. "Zaxthul has shown us that we have more in common than differences." After the meeting, Zaxthul and his friends walked across the campus. The afternoon sun cast long shadows as students hurried to classes, life returning to normal despite the extraordinary events of the previous week. "So," Nathan said, "are you going back to Arcturus?" Zaxthul shook his head. "I've requested to stay as liaison, if you'll have me." Olivia smiled. "After what we went through, you're stuck with us now. Besides," Derek added, bumping Zaxthul's shoulder with his good arm, "who else is going to explain all that alien math in Wright's class?" They all laughed, and Zaxthul felt a warmth that had nothing to do with Earth's sun. He had come to study humans to evaluate them as potential threats or allies. Instead, they had taught him about courage, friendship, and the true strength of cooperation. As they walked toward the dining hall, Zaxthul looked up at the sky, knowing that somewhere out there, the Vex were regrouping. But for the first time, he wasn't worried. Earth wasn't just a subject of study anymore, it was his home too, and he would help protect it.